I felt like I just didn't matter. Just didn't matter. And there was a sense of just wanting the earth to swallow me up. I felt like, well, if food can be my friend, if I can have sweetness, then at least that is something. My food gets to be my friend. It doesn't talk back. It doesn't go away. It doesn't yell at me. It doesn't hit me. It doesn't call me names. It's always there.
So Katie and I had a conversation with Janine Roth today, and woohoo! I read her when I was in my early 20s. I don't think I spoke English very well. I read it with a dictionary just because she changed my relationship with my food, with my body. One of her books is called If You're Gonna Eat Off the Refrigerator, Pull Up a Chair, which was my very thing. Like I would eat in front of the refrigerator, everything that was in sight when I was a young adult. So, there was so many moments where she was speaking and I was just like resonated deep in my heart in this quest of self-love and just learning to just become such a good friend to myself. So that was a conversation for me. What about you?
There were so many questions in there that I felt are such a gift to examine the relationship, the stories we have, not just with our relationship with food, but how we nourish ourselves in general, the relationships we're in, how they nourish us. So that I was taking a lot of notes for my own journaling practice because there's some pretty powerful questions in that conversation.
One of the things she said when she said that her family was not very good at expressing the stuff, that they would be elephants in the room, and she became herself an elephant. That hit me like full front. So, because there definitely was a lot of unspoken things when I was growing up, and I was told everything's fine when I could totally feel what was really going on underneath. And so I was very, very moved and very deeply changed by that conversation. So
beautiful.
Again, we love our conversation. So of course we love this one, but let's go hear it, because this one was really, it hits home very powerfully.
Oh, well, hello, Sophie, and hello, Janine. Hi. I wanted to give a little introduction to Janine because I first read your work decades ago, and it was the only thing I could ever find that really made sense to me about women and their relationship to their body, and particularly their relationship to emotional eating. And so I was familiar with your work at that level for many, many years, and then had the opportunity to meet you in person and find out, what a wild, wacky sense of humor you have, but also this deep sense of respect for the journey of being human and what we can find over our journey of a lifetime about what it is to really be kind to ourselves. And so I just wanted to appreciate you giving us some of your time and wisdom today and just celebrate you as a sensational human being.
Oh, thank you, Katie. Well, you forgot to mention that it was Gay who actually did here's Janine, because he read my book about my cat and my father.
Yes.
He wrote to me and he told you, and you were very impressed that, but Gay, it was the most gorgeous letter I ever got. And I know that we're not talking about my cat or my.
Well, we could talk about cats too. Absolutely.
That's right. I forgot who I was talking to. But anyway, women and food and bodies is a good place to talk.
Yeah, I think it's a good place. And what I've admired so much the writing that you've been doing recently about presence. I really see it as how, in the midst of everything that's going on, how we can find presence. And so I know you want to update, but I would just love to have you jump in, particularly with what do you think is the gateway for women, the best gateway to really form a loving relationship with themselves and food?
Right. Well, I think the initial gateway is understanding that most of us don't have one. That's the first step, is understanding that there's some degree of suffering or pain, or I should say, lack of kindness towards ourselves. And I don't think that most of us realize how deep that goes. And it goes from inheriting it from the culture, from our mothers, and then teachers, a lot of teachers, and then more and more from the culture, the impossible. And then I would say, I don't really want to use the word violent in this regard, but I would say just awful standards that most women hold themselves to in terms of what they're supposed to look like. So I think that's where it starts. So I think in understanding that there's a way that we can be on our own sides that we're not. And it's a way that we reject ourselves again and again and again without even realizing we're doing it. That's what I think is the hardest part, is not because it's so normalized in the culture that we don't even realize how much we are against ourselves and our bodies in terms of trying to fit into a particular ideal, in terms of trying to eat a certain way, in terms of trying to exercise a particular way. It never ends, really. So that's the first step. And then we can step into the relationship itself with food in particular by looking at what, when, and how much we eat, and what are the food rules we're following without even realizing we're following. So that's enough as a first answer.
I love that. And also to throw my hat in the conversation, I used to be 350 pounds and I lived in Paris, which if you've ever been there, really is like weighing 900 because everybody is so petite and so skinny. And I read your book. My first time I read your book, I was in the throes of that and the pain of that. And I remember I didn't speak English that well, but I remember reading it with the dictionary to really get the depth of your writing. And I was sobbing the entire time because I was that woman and I am no longer that woman who tortures myself. So it's really an incredible honor to be here and be with you and to hear the journey that also has brought you here. So I wanted to share that as well. Thank you. Thank you for all the work that's made us become loving beings to ourselves and our sisters and our friends and to each other.
That's beautiful. Thank you for telling me.
Isn't that lovely?
Yeah.
One of the things that was just occurring to me as you were speaking is that part of this structure is that women are taught to evaluate themselves almost exclusively from the outside.
Yes.
How do I look? How do other people think of me? How does this thing fit? Does this make me look fat? And not at all to what do I really want? What is my body craving? Is this enough? How do I know what I want to eat? The whole internal body intelligence reference. And so I'm curious too. I know you have whole processes that you lead people through, but I'm wondering if someone began to face how it actually is, what are some things that they can do to begin befriending themselves?
So I would say there are two levels of working on that. The first and most obvious level is the external level, food itself, to become clear about how you are treating yourself around food, what you're saying to yourself around food. Do you, for instance, even consider what your body really wants to eat? And, in the early years, I wrote about intuitive eating. Eat what you want, when you want, and how I ate 2 weeks of raw chocolate chip cookie dough when I first started, and how I went on to pumpkin ice cream and ice cream sundaes and all of that. Though I was much younger then, my body was a lot more resilient then. It could handle just eating 100% sugar, basically, for 2 weeks. What I didn't realize then, and this is the second level, is that there wasn't actually an adult at home. I was listening to what the 11-year-old who got stultified or stunted or stopped by being told she was too fat, by being put on her first diet. When I was 11, I'm writing a book now about my mother and me, about mothers, daughters, and food, actually. And there's one scene in there where I go out for my second good humor ice cream cone of the day, 11, and my brother is standing next to me. He has one of my friends, Sharon, got a creamsicle. My brother got a toasted almond, whatever. And I was just about to get something, and my mother grabbed my hand and said, "You can't have that. You're getting fat." That was that. And there was such shame about it. And I ran back inside and I just cried and cried and cried. And then I ate a lot of frozen Milky Ways right after that. That was my response. I look at pictures of myself now when I was 11. I wasn't fat at all.
Yes.
My mother was a fat kid and didn't want me to follow in her footsteps.
I have exactly the same story. And I bet there are many, many women who, my mother was afraid I would get fat. And there was a picture of me rowing when I was 9. I was rowing in a boat on a lake and I was skinny. I wasn't fat.
No, it was just their fear and their shame that got passed on mother to daughter. And I think it was my mother's mother, who passed that on to my mother, she calls it chubby. She went shopping in the chubby section of Macy's. And
Which is the most shameful thing I think was ever done in a department store.
I agree. Horrible.
Well, I will tell you both on that, though, that living in France, there was no clothes for chubby people. And so we were basically left. My mother, who knew how to sew, took 2 pairs of pants of the same material and made one thigh out of 2 pieces of the pants in this corduroy mustard pants that I had to wash at night so I could wear them in the morning. There's a version where you don't have options.
Yes.
The only option, actually, the only option was for grandmothers, the moo-moos, the
Yes, right.
the tent, that was it. So one store would have been nice.
Okay. Well, there's another side to everything, right, Katie?
Of course, of course. And so we went through the shame of the chubby section. I forget what they called the plus or the plus size or half size, which was supposed to make you feel like
Totally better.
Crazy, PR stuff. But I think that what we're all pointing to is that we're never right.
Right.
And that drives the economy, because you can always keep getting the next thing, the next product, the next thing is going to make you now finally acceptable.
Right. If only I had fill in the blank, then I would be happy. If I were thin, I would be happy. Of course, I hear from so many of my students, I heard this classic line years ago, I would die to be as thin as I was 5 years ago, when I would have died to have been thinner. And so the real thing is, which is what I know now, is that, and this is very hard for people to hear, part of actually truly changing, not just fixing your relationship with food, which is part of a much bigger picture than just the relationship with food. I think that one's relationship with food is an outpicturing or an expression of how you actually feel about yourself.
Right.
And so what I now am working with people on a lot is, what are the early conclusions you made before you even realized you made them about yourself? Not really about food, but I'm not enough. I don't matter. I'm doomed. I'm irrelevant. I'm giving you just quite a few that I've had about myself and that my students have had. When you come from I'm irrelevant, I don't matter, and that's unexamined or unnamed, then who the hell cares about what you do with food?
Mhm.
Because you don't matter.
Mm.
It's never going to work for you. You don't matter. You're doomed. Why should I even put out this kind of energy? So I feel like it's important for people to realize that there's a step down or step in process, I should call it, where you can name and question these conclusions. Like when my mother grabbed my hand,
Mhm.
I felt like something is really wrong with me.
Yeah.
First of all, I felt like, oh my God, how come I never realized I was fat? How come she's singling me out here? But then there was a sense, and I had many experiences with my mother, not just about food with this, where I felt like I just didn't matter. Just didn't matter. And there was a sense of just wanting the earth to swallow me up.
Mhm.
I felt like, well, if food can be my friend, if I can have sweetness, then at least that is something. My food gets to be my friend. It doesn't talk back. It doesn't go away. It doesn't yell at me. It doesn't hit me. It doesn't call me names. It's always there. And it's sweet. And so sweet things and forbidden love, God, because I felt like I was never the kind of girl a mother could love.
Hmm.
And I wasn't because I was fat. I made that conclusion. That was my conclusion. And so if only I could be thin, I would be lovable. But then all I wanted was sweet things because they were forbidden. And I kept feeling like, well, if I was thin, then I could eat those sweet things. And if I was thin, I'd have my mother's love and then I'd be able to eat sweet things. It got all tied in there. So I think realizing that you are telling yourself lies about without realizing it, I don't matter. That's a lie. That was an unavoidable conclusion. I mean, kids don't know any better. And they take what's ever happening out there to mean something about me.
Mhm.
So she's acting like that. So I must not matter. I must not be lovable. And until I examine that and really forgive myself for making these really painful but unavoidable conclusions. And then once you see that they're actually not true, and of course, some conclusions you have to work with over and over and over and over again because they were inscribed before you could talk.
I remember one of my absolute favorite moments, although painful. My daughter was maybe 10 and we were skiing and she fell and hurt herself and she's crying. And we go back to my mother's house in the Alps and all she could do is say, would you like Nutella? Would you like some ice cream? Would you food, 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 food? And my daughter's just sobbing. And at some point she looked to my mother and she said, I'm just sad. I'm just in pain and I'm sad. And I sat there and I felt I felt the but I also felt this is what was done to me. Like I would come home sad. I would come home with any feeling and it would just be like shoving down your throat with Nutella. And it was just such an awakening of how uncomfortable she was, my mother, how uncomfortable she was with an expression of sadness or feelings around you.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And the other thing that's occurring to me is the obsession with how we look and how we don't look and what we're eating takes up, it for me, it used to take up so much space, and so much time in my day that what I wasn't expressing is my own creativity, my own wants, other kinds of pleasures that are available besides food. And so one of the big shifts for me is that food has really ceased to be an issue, which I never thought was possible ever in my life. And it can be, I can make different choices and without doing, well, if I have this now, I can't have it tomorrow because I only have a certain, all of this calculation and keeping track of it. So it just frees up so much more space to enjoy life.
It does. And that's what it's about. It's really about that. I heard somebody say, teachers say recently, be how you want to feel and feel how you want to be. And so coming from that place, so that's a leap a little bit more from what you're saying, Katie, but to actually come from that, how do I want to feel right now? How do I want to be right now? What do I want my relationship with food to be right now? I mean, that's a little different, of course, than what you were saying, what I was saying about looking at the conclusions, but both can be held.
And they're all part of the journey too. And the discovery of where this came from and the discovery of what is a lie. How do I know it's a lie? How do I know that it doesn't fit me? And then being able to really author myself like, this is what I want, knowing how to know what I want.
Right. And so giving yourself free reign. I mean, I always say that how you know it's not true is that you hear it or somebody tells you and your energy drops.
Beautiful.
Something in you that it doesn't feel good. You feel worse when you hear it. But if there's a light, if there's lightness, if you come up in energy, then you know this is it. This is, at least in this second, in this moment, this is true for me.
Yeah. And also what I'm hearing is that I learned, and I imagine that other people learn, to make choice by choice, not to make a choice like this is my choice for all time. And if I fail from that choice, then, I have just failed. But this was a choice. And, that didn't really like the way that turned out. So I'm going to make a different choice.
Yes. Right.
That is for me one of the measuring now where I look at the bites before I put them in my body and think about, is this an act of love? Is this going to make me feel good? Like I don't like sugar. Sugar hurts my body. It makes me itchy. It's not a judgment on other people eating sugar, but really for my body, clearly there's something. So I look at the thing and I think to myself, if I eat it, is this going to be giving love to myself or not? And very often the answer is it's not an act of love. And so I choose, as you were saying, Katie, I redirect my focus to like what could be an act of love in this moment. And it often is not sugar, frankly. I'll go directly to an apple or I'll go to something that's more nurturing. So to read, is this an act of love or not, has been very powerful for me. So it's interesting.
Nice. Too. I think that's a beautiful practice. I will often, talk to my students. They'll say, well, how do I know? And I'll say, well, go up and down the aisles in the grocery store and stop in front of many different things and say, first of all, have I ever eaten this? And if I have, how did it make me feel? And they usually know. Second, just stand there. How do I think this would feel in my body? And I think for those of us who actually don't know, that's a good practice to do. And or if you really don't know, then you test it out. You eat it, a couple of bites. How does this feel? Does it give me energy or does it take away energy? Do I feel brighter or do I feel duller? Like that. There are questions to ask yourself about how anything, not just food, a particular person, somebody, not just doing things. I had a therapist who once said to me, I don't want to is a complete sentence. So really getting it, that saying no when somebody invites me to do something, because something in me knows immediately no, even though it sounds like a good idea. And even though Matt, my partner, might think it's a good idea, I can say, sweetheart, you go. I just don't want to.
Yeah, I just don't want to. What a freeing sentence.
I know. I love it.
What you were saying was reminding me of a shift that I've experienced recently, that when I would go out and eat with people, I would always wonder, why are they leaving things on their plate? Why aren't they eating everything? Because, I came from there are children starving somewhere. And so I have to eat everything on my plate, or it means that I don't love my mother. My mother thought, so all of that. And when I recently, in the last several years, when I'm having dinner with someone, I'm so interested in the nourishment of the connection that I actually forget about the food. And to me, that's just been a miracle.
I would say that is. Yeah, because you're interested in true nourishment then.
Yeah. And I have the space now. And, I'm saying that because I think that when we're caught up in this, in this cycle, when women especially are caught up in this cycle, they don't realize that there's only a certain amount of nourishment that comes from food, but there's a huge amount of nourishment that comes from connection and sharing and deepening and feelings and, and saying what you really like and what's up for you.
Yes. Yeah.
Katie and I often talk about small talk as a thing that we don't like very much. But I just realized this weekend I was with people that are incredibly gifted at small talk, incredibly gifted at it. That is really pretty much all they do. But the one thing I noticed is when the food start with the where we going for food, where it's like the most important decision we're going to make all year. Then comes the menu and everybody's like studying the thing, like it's a thing, like it's the most thing. Then the food arrives, everybody's quiet and just like in their food. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there going like, I would like to have a conversation at some point of substance. But I'm just realizing that for some people, the focus on the way you just described it, as how for you the focus is on the connection. For a lot of people, it's avoiding the connection that leads to the excess focus on the food, I think.
And Janine, I'm wondering, with your recent experiences, with health challenges and also the deepening of your own practices, your own spiritual practices, I'm wondering how that has opened up new ways of presencing, of getting nourishment from the environment, of noticing beauty, which, like, if we just look behind you, you can see that you create beauty in your environments. And my sense is that's one of the things that opens up when we break free of this system of food oppression.
Yeah. So, as you know, Katie, because you saw some of the writing I did in February, I just was walking to the kitchen and then I just kind of collapsed on the floor. I couldn't get up. I was in a lot of pain and I couldn't stand up. And I actually couldn't stand up until Matt, my partner, came back, got me up, and I was in excruciating pain. Turned out I had broken 4 vertebrae, which I didn't know at the time. I just knew I couldn't walk. I couldn't stand. I was in excruciating pain. So I spent a lot of time over that next month on my left side, looking out the window. And I knew immediately, and this is what often happens to me. I once had a beautiful teacher, Jean, who said to me, Janine, you do really well in catastrophes. Really, it's the day-to-day life that you can use a little improvement on. And it's true. When I was in a car accident and ended up in a wheelchair for 6 weeks, Matt would wheel me around. He'd leave me in front of the wall when he got a phone call, and I'd be just sitting there in front of the wall. It's like, sweetie, you forgot something. Me? But then I would just start breathing, and I would realize, I kind of like the color of this wall. It's multi-layered. And then I'd start sensing my feet and I was present. And the same thing happened when we lost all our money to Bernie Madoff. I knew immediately if I was going to live through that, I needed to get into the present moment immediately. Because otherwise, having lost every penny of 30 years, I would live in terror. And so I started being hypervigilant about being present. What didn't I lose? What do I have enough of? And it was a day-to-day practice. Within a couple of days, I think I was happier than I'd ever been in my whole life with no money at all. I realized I had enough of what I needed. I wasn't quite sure how we were going to pay our mortgage, but that it didn't matter because I realized in the present moment, going back to the injury in February, when I am absolutely present, nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong. So I knew very soon after this, I needed to stay in the present moment. I needed to stay here. And if I didn't think this actually, but now I know what was actually going on. I realized that if I was in the present moment where nothing is wrong, healing, of course, would happen much quicker because I wouldn't be resisting. And I do know that the second I start galloping into the future based on, oh my God, what if I never walk again? Oh my God, I don't know what's the matter. Oh my God, am I paralyzed? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Then that creates intense suffering. That resistance to what's happening, meaning resistance to the present moment, was the same as saying, okay, I choose to suffer now. I volunteer me for suffering. I don't want to be where I am. Stephen Levine, that beautiful Buddhist teacher, used to say, hell is wanting to be somewhere that you're not. And I knew then quickly, because as Jean said, I do very well in catastrophes. I knew quickly that I needed to stay there, period. I could not go anywhere but there. And what I started noticing was how gorgeous everything was. We have this garden outside our bedroom window. It's actually doors. And I realized, oh my God, I don't think I've looked at this garden except for when I've passed it to make the bed on the other side. And because I couldn't move, I didn't have any choice. I had to look at the garden. I had to look at the sky. I had to look at the green. And soon I was just breathing in this beauty. And every time my mind would wander, I would bring it back. And I realized the definition of peace then, which is being in this exact moment. And this is going to sound very odd, not having a goal or an agenda that I was pushing myself towards, that this moment was only an interlude to that. So really, like, okay, I'm waiting to heal. No, at that point, I realized, what if I never change? What if I really can't walk? What if this is how it always is? What if this is it? And I realized, okay, all right, I've got my eyes. Matt was bringing me toasted pumpkin seed tortillas that he was slathering with almond butter and honey, which was quite good. I could only eat it with one hand, but that was good. He brought me scrambled eggs one day, which I had to eat with my hands because I couldn't pick up any silverware. I felt a little bit, I don't know if you all saw The Miracle Worker with, I don't know if you remember the scrambled egg scene in there where, Anne Bancroft playing Helen Keller's teacher would not let Helen get up until she finished the damn scrambled eggs. And she had to eat them with her hands. And I felt like, I'm back in The Miracle Worker here, eating scrambled eggs with my hands and grunting. This is delicious. So I just found the humor and the grace in everything. And I did have moments of shrieking because every time I moved, I was in excruciating pain. I never felt pain like that in my life. And I didn't know till I got myself to an MRI what was going on. So I'd shriek and then I'd be in bliss. I'd shriek, and then I'd be in bliss, shrieking bliss, shrieking bliss, shriek bliss. But when the shriek happened, it just came up, and there it was, and then it was over.
Mm-hmm.
And those were, and I knew what it was going on. I said to myself, sweetie, mind this time right now, because chances are you will be able to get up, you will be able to walk, but whatever you're learning now will hold you in good stead. And to keep on saying to myself, if I had orchestrated this, what would I have wanted to learn? And so I
Great question.
That is a good question.
And then I'd say, how is this for me, not against me? That was my mantra, actually. How is this for me, not against me? How is this for me, not against me? Because it's so easy. It would have been so easy to go back into my old conclusions, which I was talking about. I'm doomed. I can never get it right. I knew this was bound to happen. Everything was too good. Now it had to fall apart. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. And so keeping myself out of what I call the bad neighborhoods of my mind, that was an effort. But then I did. And so then I did. And I didn't really want to talk to friends, because if I would talk to friends, they would say, oh my God, that sounds terrible. That sounds awful. Oh, I'm so sorry. And I felt like I needed to stay in, here's what's going on. I'm not sorry about it. I mean, certainly if I had a preference, it wouldn't be this, but maybe it would have been this, because maybe I couldn't have learned that any other way. So did that answer your question, Katie? Now I can't even remember.
Absolutely. Oh, I can't remember either, but I love what you were saying. And what I'm hearing is that this is a meditation in action. So the choosing again, which is the heart of meditation, is coming back to releasing your breath or whatever the mantra. But I hear that you've now incorporated that into your day-to-day life. That sense of, what am I experiencing now? How is this for me right now? So the presencing, your various doorways to presencing seem just incredibly valuable.
Yes, they're good practices. And I realized that, and this is my bias, I'd spent so many years the other way. Just it had been inscribed in my nervous system that I woke up every day, something's wrong, and who's to blame? Or something's wrong, and I'm to blame. The inner critic was, and sometimes still is, very strong. I sometimes wake up in what I call dysphoria, which is a discontent, which is nothing's right, and nothing is wrong either, but there's still a feeling that nothing's right. And that's how I grew up in the mood. It was an off-gassing of a wound, of the wound that I felt about not being enough, not being lovable. That's how I see it now. The dysphoria is like an off-gassing. It was the atmosphere of always feeling like something was wrong and nobody was listening to me, because I'd say, what's happening? Nothing. Looks like the two of you are unhappy. No. I just heard you talking on the phone, Mom, to what sounded like your lover. Nope, you were hearing things. So this distrust of knowing what I knew, seeing what I saw, feeling what I felt was there. And then this off-gassing of dysphoria, of just this grayness, this dullness, because I think that's how I dealt with it, was by shutting down and becoming, nobody would address the elephant in the living room, so I became the elephant in the living room. And what I realize now is, if I'm not mindful, that can be, again, what I wake up with, but then I bring myself back to these practices all the time. So it's pretty, I would say at some point soon, I hope to have this presence be utterly normalized and there's not descent into something's wrong and who's to blame, and it's usually me. But even this morning, I was taking a walk, and one of my teachers has said to me many times, if you woke up in the morning and you had no memory and you didn't know your name, and there was no ability to refer back to the present or to the
Past.
right, the past, thanks, or roll it out as it becomes the future, because that's what happens when you do that, then who would you be? And I realized, I would just be happy. I would be right here.
Mhm.
I'd be happy because I wouldn't know anything else. Well, what you can say.
I was going to say, it's beautiful how you just brought it back, because as we're wrapping up the conversation here, just back to where you were as a child before all of that happened. You were just playing with the water and the thing, and just like the simple thing that we were doing before they lied to us and we bought the lies somehow. It took a minute to undo all this. I'm curious, Janine, as we wrap it up, and both of you, what would you say? Because I'm hearing there's so much depth in the work that's been done in between the three of us. I'm pretty sure we could list an entire yellow pages of things we've done. But I'm curious to, like, if someone were to start this path, they just woke up and they don't like themselves and they are not in a healthy relationship with their food, to wrap it up with what we were saying earlier. I'm curious, like, where does one start? What's a good, like, maybe a smaller shift that people can make?
Yeah, that's what Katie, you asked me that at the beginning too, where to start. And my response is still my response, which is 2 levels, which is if you're suffering about food and the size of your body, then the place to start is by asking yourself, if I was utterly kind to myself right in this moment with this meal, what would I do? What would I eat? What, when, and how would I eat? Would I eat sitting down? Would I eat sugar, even though, see, this is where it cuts through, even though I know I don't feel good after I eat sugar. If anything was on the table and my well-being, my sense of myself was really my priority, how would my relationship with food be? If I was living in it's already the way I want it to be, and I am already, this is imagination, I'm talking about taking a leap here, then, so you're living in the state of the wish fulfilled, basically. And you are living as that, as who you want to be. The second thing I would ask, so that's what I would do on the food level. And the second level, because, there are 2 levels, is I would say, sweetheart, be the one you're waiting for. Be the one you're waiting for. Now, for everybody, that's different. That would be a different thing. Be the one you're waiting for. Where? Is it in work? Yesterday, I've been writing this book for over a year, and yesterday I realized, the structure is terrible. It just does not work. And I thought, you know what? Forget it. I don't want to be a writer anyway. I don't even know why I've been doing this for this last year. I'm 73. It's time to go out and have a good time. I want to wake up in the morning and not get out to my studio. Done. I'm done. And then as the day went on, I realized, well, the thing is, I love writing. So why would I take that away from myself? This has been a joy to do that. And I realized that was what I called an adaptive behavior. So out of the wound, I'm doomed, it never works, comes an adaptive behavior. Push down the wound and then have some kind of adaptive behavior where I didn't want to anyway. I'm sorry I did anyway. Or else overachieving. to push down, I can't do it right. So there are different ways. There's a polarity there. And I just let myself have that reaction. It was like, right, I get it. Okay. Yeah, it's a drag. And let's see. So if I let go of the past, of the shivers of the past and the contraction of the past, what's left is being authentic, doing what I love, and then not having an agenda. Because, then I realized yesterday, well, okay, maybe the structure doesn't work and maybe this book will never get published, but so what? I've loved the process.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And what I want to underline about what you're saying is that you're favoring authenticity. You're favoring. So here's what, I expressed this. What I was hearing was like, it was just your version of raspberry. And then you went, oh yeah, in that moment, that's how I'm feeling. And it doesn't become then a structure. It becomes a flow of your discovery and you're coming to the next moment and the next moment. And so I love that you value authenticity because it's like the prime directive for me. That's the doorway for whatever is, what's my authentic experience and expression right now. So I love hearing you refer to that.
Yes. And then realizing when I'm in a reaction, because for me to say, oh, I don't want to write anyway, and, forget it, that would have been authentic, actually.
Yeah.
That would have been looking at my friends who are retired, who are like, I can't believe you're writing another book. Well, yeah, I am, because I love it. Why wouldn't I? I like walking on the beach. I love walking on the beach, but I love writing too. So why wouldn't I do what I love?
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So it's being willing to question, because of course that didn't feel so good. It felt like a giving up of some kind of, and under that was a deeper belief of, this is too hard. I can't do it. I gave this my best shot. It didn't work, and then I started asking myself, okay, sweetheart, where did you feel this before?
Yes.
There were many situations in which I felt that. Many. I could name 10 just in like 30 seconds. And it was like, right, okay, there we are.
The ability to be with yourself on the journey from and honoring your insides and honoring your inner landscape. And then from that, all of the other, the journey, the things that you learned takes its place in you being in charge of your life.
Yes, exactly. It's not having my well-being dependent on external circumstances.
Yes. That sounds like ta-da.
This is a beautiful place to stop. I do think that we should come again in a few months and do it again when the book is out or whatever. We should.
Yeah, well, it'll be a few months till the book is out. I can tell you that, because it's not due till March 1st. And then it'll be a whole time.
So, Janine, with all this beautiful conversation we've been having, I'm curious, like where can I go to read more, experience more? Like what are you up to with that?
Well, the love child of my life, aside from my books, and of course, well, he's not a child, my partner and my dog, are my retreats, because that's where all this work, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, where everything we've been talking about gets put into action. So every day we eat together. People really look at what they're eating, when they're eating it, why they're eating it. Was it the 6-year-old that chose it? Is it the 10-year-old that chose it? We eat really slowly. Those are stunning daily experiences. And then for the rest of the time, aside from the movement in the morning and the evening, because there is movement and meditation, there's this process, or many processes, where we look at, okay, what do I really believe about myself? What is keeping me from being authentic? Mm-hmm. What is keeping me from being myself? That's what we really want to look at. to see what are the unconscious decisions or conclusions I've made that are basically running my life that I'm not even aware of. And so we do that work and other kinds of work as well, joyful work, happy expressions of work. And so there's the eating, there's looking at what's keeping me, and then there's just plain old joy.
Oh,
That's what
beautiful. You'll have all the details in the notes.
Good. There's one retreat coming up. That's coming up the second week in November.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. It's such an honor. You both have been such trailblazer in all of these journeys and all these books you've written. Thank you for the contribution you've made to all of this. It's really beautiful.